quote here to share with you out of the gate. Loneliness is the most terrible type of poverty. Mother Teresa. It is no secret that the last handful of years have really accelerated the loneliness that was already so pervasive in our society. According to the U.S. General Surgeon, we are suffering from an epidemic of loneliness. Most recent stats state that roughly 22% of Americans report struggling with consistent feelings of loneliness. 22%. That's an alarming number. And it's not just because loneliness is a difficult feeling to deal with. Loneliness actually is horrible for our health. Dr. Richard Schwartz has been studying this very problem in America for decades. And he found that loneliness is linked to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, an increased risk of stroke, and it furthers the progression of dementia. One particular study actually saw that loneliness can be as much of a long-term health risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 15. It's quite a bit. The same research found that those who fall into the categories of loneliness or isolation or even simply living on their own see their risk of premature death rise from 26 to 32% just from simply living on their own or being isolated. We live in this era that through our various technological or even mobile advancements, our world has somehow grown kind of smaller and smaller, yet the space between people has gotten larger and larger. Now, loneliness does have many different causes, which vary from person to person. So we don't always understand exactly what it is about, our particular experiences that make us feel lonely. But there are some common events that most of us run into over the course of our lives. It can be things like the loss of a loved one, going through a really difficult breakup or a divorce. It can be moving to a new location where you don't have family or an established friend group there or a network of support. It can be a new job and then feeling isolated from these new coworkers of yours. It can be retiring and then losing that routine of life, that rhythm, and losing all your social contact with your fellow workers. Sometimes it looks like going to a new school. For some of you, maybe you can flash back to that, or some that are heading on your way to college. That's a big piece of this. Maybe it's being a new parent for you, and where you're just overwhelmed with caring for your child that you have no time for anything else. Maybe it's experiencing financial troubles that keeps you from participation with others. You can't afford to go on the fun little getaway for the weekend, or to the concert, or even to the movies. Physical health problems or mobility issues can keep you from social interactions and from different situations. Now, there is a lot less stigma now about depression and mental health. But many of us still have a hard time talking about and admitting that we are lonely. Earlier, I gave that statistic that 22% of Americans reported feeling lonely. But when the questions on that survey were reworded, 60% reported feeling disconnected or isolated. And that number climbs to 3/4 to 75% in the surveys of younger people, aged 24 and under. We've arrived at a place where we are comfortable admitting sadness and depression, but we are still not willing to say that we are lonely. Why is that? I mean, loneliness isn't a unique human experience, clearly, by these statistics. So why can't we talk about it openly? For many of us, admitting that we are lonely feels like confessing that we are unwanted or that we are undesirable. We're like the kid that is sitting alone in the cafeteria, or the one playing by themselves out on the playground. Really, it's opening ourselves up to one of our greatest fears. It's this: do people like me? On a personal note this morning, I want to tell you that I struggle with loneliness. The questions of, do people like me? Do they care for me? Do they accept me? Do they want to be with me? Those have been pretty constant throughout my entire life. And wouldn't you know, this week, as I'm studying and preparing for this message, all of these questions hit me hard. You see, a week ago, just this past Sunday, was the cutoff for our men's retreat registrations. And this is an event I lead. It's for our whole state of Michigan, Church of God churches. And so on this past Monday, all of the other churches around our state are supposed to begin letting me know that they are coming to the retreat, and I get their registration numbers. And that is important because we have a minimum that we have to hit out at Lincoln Lake Camp, or we're in a little bit of a tight spot. And so as I'm waiting for all that to come in from all the churches, I begin to notice all day Monday, I'm struggling with just some feelings of panic, of worry, a deep unsettledness. And as I kind of step back from that, ultimately I was feeling lonely. Now, it didn't help that the very first response I got on Monday to checking in with some of these churches was from a church that has attended every year that we've done this, like since 2014. And the response I got, this is all it was in email, was they had, quote, taken down the sign-up sheet for lack of interest. Oof. That's like a gut punch, right? And so, of course, where my mind goes, I began mentally crafting a men's retreat cancellation email because surely no one else was going to want to come hang out at Lincoln Lake Camp. Now, last year, I should give you this detail, that last year we really changed our format quite a bit. Specifically, we moved towards a much more open dialogue and conversation format in our main gatherings. And the vulnerability of that deliberate move was definitely worth it, but it still causes me a lot of trepidation. And that's because it makes me wonder who is really up for that honest work of engaging like that and who isn't. Who would rather kind of do the old model and be entertained by the gatherings instead of participate in it. And now moving into this year, I'm still considering, will people turn out? Will they come hang out with us, or will they just opt out? As a leader of this event, those kind of questions make me feel incredibly lonely. Now, not that everything has to always be buttoned up nicely, but I want to tell you that on Tuesday, only 24 hours later, you're getting a good insight into Matt Stone today. 24 hours is all it takes. Oh, man. On Tuesday, the registration numbers majorly improved. And now we're well above our minimum, so I don't have to cancel the retreat and craft those emails. We have about 78 men now. A couple more trickled in yesterday, and I think I can add them. We're at 78 men now for this year's camp. And that's up from about 16 people from last year. And boy, wouldn't you know it, in that 24-hour period, the change in my attitude, my whole outlook, completely 180'd. You see, navigating these sorts of life challenges can create a social scarcity mindset in which we are tempted to just bail out, to stop asking others, to quit seeking out friends, and to stop leading and just give up on being vulnerable with others. Because the no from people becomes deafening. It confirms all of our suspicions, right? That no one else wants to be around us, that they don't value who we are. They don't want the real person. It's really hard to do the work of being genuine and get smacked for it. Loneliness is not an objective state. It is a feeling. Therefore, it isn't dealt with by simply being busy. It isn't dealt with by having a full calendar or having constant engagement with others. What we actually need is the nourishment of close relationships with those who know us and they value us for who we are. It's about the quality of relationship, not the quantity of relationships. Each of us does have a real need for social connection. We've been designed to have sincere and meaningful relationships with our Creator and with one another. If you remember the Rhythm series, we started the first 2 weeks, we talked about the fact that it is not good for mankind, all of us, to be alone. But I'm learning, oh boy, am I learning, that we must look more closely at the connections that we are making. And we have to ask ourselves, does this connection bring life? Does it bring meaning? Is it moving me towards the divine invitation to come and rest? If not, perhaps it is better to be in actual self-aware solitude with God than to be in a room full of other people and feel alone. I mean, we have a legitimate, hardwired need to be fully known and to be loved fully. And when we are both truly known and loved, then we can begin to heal our lonesomeness. Because it's those kinds of relationships where we get to be our most authentic self. Those are the padding in life that help us sustain hope and liveliness throughout all of life's ups and downs. The hard truth that I've had to learn so much in my life, and I'm still learning, is that the opposite of loneliness is not being popular. It is not to be surrounded by people. The opposite of loneliness is love. It's the love of God in our lives. It's doing the hard work of loving yourself. And it's loving others. Psalm 23, a very familiar passage, offers a vivid picture of divine hospitality as God comes to be with us as the good shepherd. A loving shepherd who finds the one who is alone and brings them home. It is God that initiates and provides for us a relationship where we are free to be truly known and be deeply loved. So in times of loneliness and unpredictability, it is right, and folks, it is good to return to these beautiful promises. So this morning we're going to read from Psalm 23. And I know it's a very familiar passage, and you'll see it on the screen. But perhaps this morning, as we linger a little with these words, maybe it'd be appropriate to close your eyes and to meditate on them as you hear them maybe a little fresh once again. But you can follow along here on the screen. Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, and He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Our loneliness is the reminder that we were never meant to live life alone. We have a good shepherd that welcomes us into a home filled with relationships where we can experience and trust that we are known and we are loved. So your actionable step of sorts today to consider is to come home. Now, unfortunately, many of us are not quite sure what a healthy and reassuring home environment should be like, because even if you've had a pretty good go of it, okay, I've had a pretty good family myself, every family still has a pretty complex or complicated story. See, the Good Shepherd helps us imagine what being at home in the family of God is really all about. It is a safe place for us to be our truest self, to be completely vulnerable with all of our imperfections, all of our doubts, all of our questions. There's a caring Father who is in charge of protecting you and me and all of the others who are there. And yeah, there's a lot of others that are there, but don't worry. That doesn't mean that you will be overlooked. Doesn't mean I will be overlooked or left out. This shepherd knows each of his sheep that lives there and knows them in the greatest detail. Our only responsibility in this family is to hear our name and follow the call to come home. Jesus said this, "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me." We do this because in this home, the doors are always open. Jesus also said, "Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds. And to the one who knocks, the door will be opened." And once we get inside, there won't be a thing that we need. Rest and peace will come easier, knowing that the shepherd will guide each of us along calm paths and around harm's way. And even when we do face suffering and difficulties, we will not have to journey alone. Jesus said this, "I will ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate to help you and to be with you forever. The Spirit of truth." God's Spirit. The faithful shepherd of ours will accompany us into the darkest moments of life because the most difficult realities of our humanity aren't a problem for him. And the cool part is our caregiver is so good that he will even be there to celebrate in our greatest joy-filled moments as well. As the Apostle Paul would remind us, he would say, "Nothing can separate us from the love of this good God." Not our pain or our grief, not the burdens that we carry or the traumas that we have accumulated, not our fears, not our doubts, not all of the harm that we have done or the good that we have left undone. See, all of us are welcome into this household just as we are. Are you tired? Worn out? Burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me, and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Man, that sounds nice. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. All of us are being wrapped up in love, in forgiveness, in compassion, and kindness by a good and holy shepherd. So come home to the family of God. All of you, and me too, we belong here. As we end our time again today, I just want to make sure you realize these are not the blessings I have written. This is from Kate Bowler, author and professor. And this is a blessing for when you suffer alone. She writes, I see you there, suffering alone, with the illness or pain that lingers, though friends do not or cannot. You in isolation, locked in or locked out. You, the caregivers, struggling in the certainty that there is not enough strength, there's not enough time or resources. You who counsel others in their trauma, but suffer deeply from your own. You who are grieving losses, too many to name, too complex or unbecoming to speak aloud. Blessed are you, dear one, searching for someone to understand, to see your wounds and your hope for healing. You are seen as you walk that hard and lonely road. Blessed are you because your loneliness speaks a deep truth. You were never meant to do this alone. God, we pray that you'd comfort us, guide us, that our hope for more, a prayer which will be answered, might be protected too. Let's pray together.